Everything you need to know about the personality of this car resides down there. Side pipes. Nobody does side pipes. A colleague was recently pulled over in a G63 because the cops thought they were aftermarket and illegal. But they're not, and they're brilliant. And not just because they look ridiculously cool, it's because the sound that comes out of them is connected to a thumping twin-turbo V8. A far cry from this vehicle's less extroverted genesis 4 decades ago as an ultra-capable off-roader, soon favoured by armies the world over. What was then known as the G-Wagon came to Australia in the early 80s because Mercedes-Benz wanted to win a big army tender. As amazing off-road as it was underwhelming on the highway, the non-turbo diesel 300 GD didn't get up. In fact, a Mercedes executive told me that he took the car for a drive before the press launch. He hadn't driven it before. Came back to tell the techs there was something obviously wrong with that car. It was so down on power. The bad news was, the car was perfectly fine. No such problem here though, because this is in fact the second generation version of the Evergreen G. The first gen car was a bit like Grandpa's axe, regularly updated, but underneath it all, exactly the same fundamental framework. Launched globally early in 2018, this is an all-new axe. And Mercedes-AMG has gone to town in exploiting its newfound modernity. You're looking at a 250 grand, 2.5 tonne beast, powered by a 4-litre twin-turbo V8, producing in excess of 400 kilowatts and more than 800 newton metres of torque. So a new element is this vertically slatted Panamericana grille. And this car's fitted with the optional night package, which means various things around the outside are darkened, like these indicator lenses, the shells on the back of the exterior mirrors, and these enormous 22-inch rims. For the full lowdown on the technical spec, standard features, ownership costs, and safety tech for the Merc-AMG G63, make sure to go to carsguide.com.au for the full written review. Believe it or not, this slightly longer and wider machine is capable of punching a 240 km/h hole in the air. Its 4-litre twin-turbo V8 delivers an extra 10 kilowatts and another 90 newton metres compared to the 5.5-litre twin-turbo V8 it replaces. There's also a new 9-speed auto transmission in place of the 7-speed in the previous car, and it shifts really nicely. In fact, you'll find yourself shifting manually just for the hell of it, because it's so much fun. So performance is as dramatic as ever. But when I think of previous Merc-AMG G-Class offerings, sadly 2 shortcomings come to mind: steering and ride. The steering was a bit like a laggy mouse. Input on the wheel would translate a few beats later to some output at the treads on the front tyres. And the ride, the damping came up short, and a bouncy ride, unfortunately, was par for the course. Still sitting on a ladder-type frame, the new G suspension was developed by Mercedes-Benz and Mercedes-AMG. Finally, it has a decent double wishbone independent front end, with a rigid axle at the rear and coil springs all round. And a strut tower brace, Merc-AMG calls it a suspension bridge, now connects the front strut towers, increasing torsional rigidity. Steering changes from recirculating ball to rack and pinion, and it's now a variable ratio setup with electromechanical rather than purely hydraulic assistance. So the good news is that things have improved greatly in terms of both the steering and the ride. The steering is much more responsive. We're not talking about a sports car, but it's a whole lot better. And the ride, still some secondary kind of jittery behaviour, but it's way, way better. Not a limo, but definitely more civilised. You've also got things like this shell, the body, there's a lot more laser welding as opposed to spot welding, which makes it more rigid, and you can actually feel it in the car. The suspension has a stiffer platform to hang from, and it makes a difference in the way the car behaves. The new electronic architecture brings with it the latest version of Merc's Dynamic Select system, with 5 driving modes adjusting the engine, transmission, suspension, steering and assistance systems. In terms of ergonomics, things are way better with these big screens for instruments and media controls. The thing you can't get away from though is some pretty substantial pillars, and vision if you're head checking over your right or left shoulder can be a little bit mixed. But in terms of overall comfort and drivability, this car is way ahead of its predecessors. And if you want to head off highway, the G63 still features 3 100% differential locks and low-range off-road gear reduction, plus an off-road information centre. These two 12.3-inch screens Siamese together to give you a widescreen setup bring the G63 in line with more recent offerings from Mercedes and Mercedes-AMG, and there's still hectares of top-shelf leather in here. And this car's fitted with the Interior Plus package, which means it's top quality Napa leather and diamond quilted in the centre of the seats. Media includes digital radio and TV tuner, internet connectivity, 3D nav, and smartphone integration with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Plus a Burmester surround sound system with 15 speakers and 590 watts, not to mention ambient lighting with 64 colours. And that new electronic architecture also allows inclusion of 9 airbags plus active cruise control, AEB, active lane keeping assist, blind spot assist, and a whole lot more. So I'm sitting in the back behind the driver's seat set for my 183cm position, and there's plenty of footroom, tons of knee room, and just acres of headroom. Lots of space. I think 3 abreast would be doable for adults for short periods, more likely kids in the centre. There's also pull-down armrest with a couple of cup holders and a through port to allow you to load into the back seat. And a nice touch is these individual vents with climate control for the back seat passengers. And in the back there's tons of cargo space. We were able to fit the CarsGuide 3-piece luggage set or the pram without any dramas, and the rear seat splits 60/40, folds forward to liberate even more space. The AMG G63 isn't for shrinking violets. It's big, bold and fast, and in this second generation form, massively improved, technically and dynamically. It's a lot of money, but there's a lot to love, and I, for one, hope it stays around for decades to come. Bis später! If you want to know more, make sure to read the full review at carsguide.com.au. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to click subscribe.